This is the story of a world infested with monsters. In a certain city, monsters appeared everywhere, and citizens were told to evacuate immediately. One monster was raging while being attacked by ability users. The squad leader ordered them not to hesitate and to keep firing. They obeyed and each fired relentlessly, but their attacks were merely tickling the monster. Seeing that, they lost all hope. Then someone stepped forward, Arya, the story's hero. The squad leader asked him anxiously what he planned to do. Arya told him there was only one thing an ability user could do against monsters: attack them. The leader scolded him, saying, "That's reckless. You can only reduce others' magical power, and you can't even cast magic yourself." While Arya stood up front, the monster charged its energy. At the same time, someone stood covertly on a building and, with a fake smile, said, "Show them the parasite's pride." Then the monster unleashed a huge amount of magic at Arya. Arya stood confidently, reached out his hand, and absorbed the monster's attack. Just like that, as if nothing had happened, everyone was stunned. Then he activated the reverse magic circle and returned the monster's attack to it with double damage, erasing it completely while standing calmly. Let's rewind a bit. Before Arya was born, dimensional rifts appeared all over the world and summoned monsters from different dimensions. Rifts that tear and expand through space can appear anywhere. Only ability users who possess magic circles can defeat those monsters. 3 years ago, before Arya became strong, he was just a normal boy training hard to get stronger, while his sister sat in her wheelchair, teasingly laughing as she wrote down his failed attempts. Now it was attempt number 364. When she saw nothing came out this time, she suggested he try changing his method. Usually something should have shown already. She had a point. Every day more people died at the hands of monsters. Whenever a dimensional rift was discovered, a squad of ability users rushed to the site immediately. But with only a limited number of ability users, sometimes they couldn't eliminate all the monsters. So Arya kept pushing himself, which worried his sister. She suggested he take a rest. The reason his sister was in a wheelchair was that he blamed himself every day. If only he could have used his power then. It all started one day while they were talking about going on a picnic. Then suddenly they received an alert about a monster's appearance. Arya immediately told his sister Sana they had to run, but then a monster appeared behind him. His sister screamed to warn him. He tried to use his power, but nothing happened. The monster thrust out its hand to attack, but quickly, before the blow reached him, she blocked the attack and her leg was injured in the process. Then an ability user arrived on the scene and killed the monster. He was worried about her, but she was happy he wasn't hurt. From that day, he grew sick of being unable to do anything. He wanted at least to be able to protect those important to him, so he trained constantly. His sister cut his training short and told him to keep training and not to worry about her. Then she began taking notes in a diary titled, "My Big Brother's Struggle Diary." He asked her what good that would do. She told him it might help. Even if nothing worked today, that doesn't mean it will tomorrow. He smiled. He realized his sister was right. Things wouldn't stay the same forever. But suddenly they felt a huge tremor. At first they had no idea what was happening. Then from below, they saw monsters. Arya considered the monster appearances impossible because no dimensional rift was anywhere. He wondered where those monsters came from. The monsters were in a murderous frenzy. Arya realized this wasn't a time to stand idly by, so he grabbed his sister and went back home. They were relieved to reach home, thinking it was safe. They called for their mother and father. Arya looked around. He realized the monsters hadn't reached that far yet, so he decided to get his mother and father out immediately. Then the ground cracked open right away. Surprised, he wondered if it was a dimensional rift. Since rifts can appear anywhere, he suspected it might be expanding under the ground. Seeing their parents, Sana cried out worriedly to go to them, but she fell out of her wheelchair into the ground, and her brother rushed to her. She called anxiously for her big brother to help, but a monster appeared between them with a fake smile. Driven by panic, he told her to wait and that he would save her now. But the monster hit him with its tail, sending him flying through the air and throwing him to the ground. He struggled to get up, but his body wouldn't move. He wondered if he would die, unable to do anything. Seeing his sister's diary, he tried to grab it, clenching his teeth and refusing to give up. He got up with the diary in his hand. Then the monster raised its hand to strike him, and suddenly the hero was surprised at what he saw. Then he was hit by a single shot. A large hole appeared in the monster's chest and it fell to the ground. Arya looked back in shock, realizing an ability user had saved him. The person climbed down, picked him up on his back and carried him away immediately. When Arya saw his family was still inside, he asked the man to wait. His family was still inside. The man apologized, saying there was nothing he could do. Minutes later, Arya was taken away from the scene to where the other survivors were. He knelt under the rain, his heart completely broken. The man told him that by the time they received the report, the dimensional rift had almost fully expanded. When a dimensional rift fully expands, the entire area is swallowed, including the city and its people. Arya grit his teeth in anger, unable to speak, but then the man told him they would eventually enter the other dimension. They would find the people who were swallowed. That immediately caught Arya's attention. He asked the man if they could really go to other dimensions, and the man answered yes, but said civilians like him couldn't do it. He thought of his sister Sana, who still smiled even after such a terrible injury, who had asked him for help for the first time, even though he couldn't do anything despite deciding to protect her. Filled with resolve and energy coursing through his body, he told the man he would go with him to the other dimensions. The man never expected Arya to be an ability user. Then the man told Arya that missions to other dimensions are extremely difficult tasks, and permission is only granted to national-level ability users. Arya said with determination he would become one of them. Seeing his resolve, the man said nothing more, closed his eyes, and told him that to reach that level, he must first rank first at the Ability User Training Academy. Then Arya asked what happens to the people swallowed by the other dimension. The man said there's no clear information. Now, days later, Arya arrived at the academy, determined to save his family by going to the other world, even if the chance of saving them was slim. Now, after days at the Ability User Training Academy, a place only open to ability users aged 15 and up, where they hone their techniques daily to defeat monsters. The combat-designed classes were so harsh, they sometimes caused injuries, especially to those with low ability like Arya. Arya was training. The coach sighed in disappointment as he wrote his evaluation as E. At the school, an ability user's magical power can be somewhat increased through training. If you lack talent, you have no choice but to make up for it with effort. That's Arya's situation, but worse, he couldn't release any magic energy, even after trying. While he trained, Hirota Yasushi came with his gang. He told Arya he wished he would just go home already. He blocked their training. It was annoying that he stayed in the room for hours every day. Arya told him he didn't mean to bother him. The man charged energy in his hand and told Arya not to get him wrong no matter what he thought. Arya was a nuisance. Then he fired at the target in front of Arya, forcing Arya to dodge. His evaluation came back with a plus. The man told Arya that normally he should easily get a B, but when he's near him, his output drops every time. The other man smiled, saying he wished Arya would just quit. Arya couldn't say anything. He just stood there because they weren't wrong. Hours later, he returned to his dorm and said to himself in a frustrated tone that individual differences exist among ability users. Still, normally anyone can at least release magical power, yet he couldn't even do something that simple. Not only that, he actually reduced others' output. Now they were all on a field trip along a mountain path. The coach enthusiastically told them not to break their stance. They never know when a dimensional rift might appear, so they must get used to uneven ground. Suddenly, a boulder fell from above and almost crushed a student's head, but Arya was quick enough to pull him away. The young man's name was Ibuki Naoto. He thanked Arya for saving him. Arya told him not to worry, since helping each other as a team is the rule for ability users. Then Arya was told in a panic that someone was injured on the other side and asked to help rescue him. Arya went to check, but a man smiled from behind and shoved him, so he fell down. Hirota and his gang looked down at him from the cliff and said calmly that what they did was to get rid of him because he was blocking their way. Although ability users help each other as a team, having him in the team is another story. If someone like him reduces others' output, everyone's output will definitely drop. Arya didn't know what to say. The bully continued. Pushing him off wasn't bullying. It was actually helping others, and he should disappear for everyone's sake. Then they broke a rock, trying to cause a landslide. Arya avoided the falling rocks immediately, but one rock hit his leg and he fell to the ground, groaning in pain. He took off his bag and decided to calm down and treat his leg, but a monster attacked him with its tentacles. He gritted his teeth in worry. Having a monster appear at a time like this was really bad, and he told himself this couldn't be the end. To his surprise, he noticed a dimensional rift behind him, but its color was different from the usual rifts. When he saw the monsters before him, he remembered what ability users said about dimensional rifts connecting to another dimension, so he decided to take a risk, rather than die there, and entered the rift. But the rift he saw was different from what he expected. He heard a voice say, "Visitor, how many years has it been?" He turned around immediately and was surprised to see a monster, and shocked that it could speak. The monster walked toward him and said, "This is strange. An ordinary human shouldn't be able to sense the rift." The monster paused, then laughed as it realized what was happening. It welcomed Arya and told him he was the child of the revolution, long awaited, the bearer of the reverse magic circle that flips the laws of the world. Arya didn't understand what he heard. The monster then asked Arya to rejoice because it would open his future to him, and he would be able to gain a great power that would devour everything in the world. Arya was stunned and looked at the monster with suspicion, finding its words ridiculous after all. A monster agreeing to his offer would be the lowest thing a chosen one could do. But when he remembered his sister's face, he wondered if he could really achieve anything by staying weak. He still hadn't found any proof of how to use his powers. When the man outside the rift saw the monsters reach the crack, he told Arya they had come for him. He muttered, "Just a bunch of trash." Then he activated his magic, surprising Arya. Sword-like weapons appeared in the air and he launched them at the monsters. Arya was shocked to see one monster attacking another. The man told him he answered to no one. He was liberated, not allied with the monsters, nor allied with mortal humans like Arya. Then he asked Arya to choose between gaining power to carve his way through death, or becoming prey to the monsters. Seeing Arya silent, he asked for his terms. He was very impressed by Arya's calm in such a situation, and thought Arya was trying to appraise him. He smiled and said that although negotiating with humans disgusted him, this was an opportunity he couldn't ignore. Outside the rift, on top of the cliff, Hirota asked one of his crew if they'd seen any sign of Arya's body. The man answered no. Hirota found the situation annoying. If Arya had survived, it'd be trouble. Then he got an alert about monsters, but he wasn't scared. He smiled because it was the perfect chance to get rid of Arya for good. Arya couldn't run with his injuries. They didn't know someone had overheard their conversation. Back in the rift, the man asked Arya if he knew why he couldn't cast magic, despite having a magic pathway. Arya stayed silent. If he knew, he wouldn't be in this mess. The man said, "A magic pathway? At its core, it's a system that gathers the magic produced inside the body and projects it outward like a cannon. So having a magic pathway should mean you can cast magic." But in his case, he grabbed Arya's arm where blue pathways showed and said it was the opposite. Arya didn't understand at first. The monster said, "Opposite means you don't send magic outward, you pull it inward. It's a reversed magic pathway, a trait so rare it's practically unheard of in all of history." Arya began to understand bit by bit, and wondered if this was why the magic production of those around him dropped. He remembered what happened with the bully. The monster then said they needed to test it practically, and waved his hand. Monsters charged in. One of them fired a breath attack. The man told him not to be afraid. A simple attack like that was just another release of magical power, and told Arya to reverse his usual focus. Arya extended his hand, and when the monster fired its magical beam at him, it was absorbed into his hand. He was surprised by this discovery. The monster told Arya, "Every human except you only knows how to push power outward. That's why you never learned how to use your ability." The monster tried to attack again, and Arya dodged. Arya told the man that while he understood the reversed magic circle was good for defense, it would be useless if he couldn't cast magic. The man appeared behind him and asked if Arya could endure soul-shredding pain. He said Arya could gain power to devour the world, but all it required was will. Arya confidently said he was fully ready. There was something he had to do, so he wouldn't give up because of pain. The man said, "Good," and injected something into his body. Immediately, Arya felt sharp pain and dropped to his knees, moaning. He asked what the man had done. The man said he'd implanted a reverse mechanism in his magic pathway. If activated, it could let him temporarily cast magic. So now, he had to unleash it on the monsters and destroy everything in his path. Arya did as asked. He reached forward and released an enormous amount of magical power, completely destroying the monsters. The man smiled and told him he had stored an enormous amount of magic in his body, accumulated from everything he'd absorbed. He was, basically, a walking magical reservoir. But before he finished speaking, Arya collapsed. The man noticed people were already approaching, probably because they'd stayed in one place too long, and said Arya would work with him from now on. Outside the rift were talent users. They scanned the area but found no sign of the monsters, even though the readings showed they'd been exactly there. Then one of them noticed a person sitting unconscious with dead monsters in front of him. They were surprised that a student had managed to take out all those monsters alone. One of them, shocked, recognized Arya as the young man he'd saved. After a while, Arya woke up in a hospital bed. Beside him was the the instructor, who asked what had happened. Arya paused for a moment, then started to explain. Minutes later, he got up from the bed after the teacher left. He told himself he couldn't tell the instructor directly that he'd dealt with monsters. He looked at his hand and the power he'd just gained, and wondered if someone like him could make use of this trait and rise through the ranks. The next day, he went back to the training hall. He reached toward the target, recalling the feeling from before, but felt a sharp pain in his chest. It felt like his muscles and nerves were burning, but he judged that level of pain to be nothing. He then released a huge amount of magical energy, shattering the target. Even the system couldn't evaluate his magical power. He kneeled, gasping for breath. Even holding back his power, he never expected that result. He figured it could be useful as a trump card, but the exhaustion from using it was extreme, so continuous use was practically impossible. He couldn't fight an entire battle with just one technique. Then, Ibuki approached from behind with a stern expression. Arya asked what was wrong. Ibuki told him there was something he wanted to check. He asked if Arya falling into that collapse of Earth was Hirota and his gang's doing. He'd heard Hirota and the others talking during the outdoor training. Arya was stunned. Ibuki clenched his teeth in anger and said, "That's cruel and unforgivable. I'll report it to the academy." Arya asked why he wanted to report them. After a moment of silence, Ibuki replied, "If people with power abuse it, this world will end. Don't you think?" He added, "It may seem idealistic, but at least academy students should strive for a better life without exploiting their powers." Arya smiled and said, "All right." Though he had no intention of forgiving Hirota and his gang, he wanted to focus on training himself now. Ibuki agreed. Neither of them knew Hirota had overheard their conversation. Later, at the faculty door, Ibuki was about to enter, but Hirota stopped him. Hirota dragged him into a corner and shoved him to the ground with his gang. He told Ibuki that pretending to be kind wouldn't get him anywhere in life. Instead of sticking his nose into others' business, he should stay home and study. Ibuki snarled in anger and called Hirota and his gang losers, which angered Hirota. Those who kill humans don't have the qualifications to be talent users. Hirota began casting spells at Ibuki, saying, "Trash like you of rank B shouldn't lecture me about qualifications," then attacked him with magic. He smiled happily, taunting Ibuki to defend himself. No matter how high-minded his talk, without power he was helpless. Ibuki confidently said, "Talent users' power isn't for harming others." Hirota didn't care. He saw Ibuki looking worn out, despite his proud words. He said he'd crush his morale so he'd never interfere again. Then he unleashed stronger spells at Ibuki, not caring if he was destroyed. But Arya suddenly intervened and blocked them. Everyone was shocked. Hirota couldn't believe his eyes. He had no idea why Arya was completely unarmed despite releasing magical power. Hirota decided to bomb Arya with more magic, to see if he could still stand. Arya had a hard time defending against all the attacks because his awareness couldn't keep up with simultaneous strikes. The other two boys laughed and told Arya to stop acting cool. While Hirota was absorbed in his power, Arya suddenly appeared in front of him and grabbed his hand. Hirota said someone like him who drowns in power and constantly insults others couldn't compare to Ibuki. Immediately, Hirota noticed something wrong. His magic drained incredibly fast. Then he fell to his knees. Arya figured that since his ability absorbed magical energy, what would happen if he used it directly on another person's magic circle? As he thought, Hirota's magic was completely drained. The two boys were shocked and anxiously asked Arya what he did. Arya said to Hirota, "Using magical power against humans puts your qualifications as a talent user in question, so I'll use a different kind of power instead. 1 against 3 isn't unfair." The next day at school, the teacher entered class and checked the attendance list. He announced Hirota was absent again. Arya wondered if what happened the day before taught Hirota a lesson, but then the teacher made a bigger announcement. The promotion exam between classes would be held next week, so he urged everyone to take it seriously. Talent users are ranked by magical power, but teamwork and other factors are also evaluated. Arya's class was in the lowest tier, mostly students with weak magical output or poor cooperation skills like Hirota. The futures of top-tier and bottom-tier students were completely different. Only upper classes could join Dimensional Rift exploration campaigns. Arya decided he had to climb up, no matter the cost. At that moment, Ibuki approached and asked Arya if he had a moment. After Arya agreed, the classmate asked if Arya was also taking the promotion exam and suggested they study together. He smiled and said he wanted to become someone who could support others. Arya brushed off the compliment but agreed. If they did this together, they'd aim for the top. They shook hands, and the classmate answered confidently. One of the female students was watching the boys. Later, at the Talent Users Training Center, Arya and Ibuki prepared to train. It was a simulation facility where users could fight virtual monsters. Before starting, Ibuki suggested reviewing last year's exam. Arya explained it was a dungeon-clearing type based on battling dimensional rifts. They watched the footage, and Ibuki commented that the user looked strong, but Arya disagreed. He explained that users lacking coordination skills often run out of mana, especially when dealing with blind spots or group fights. Ibuki realized the person in the video was about to run out of mana, and agreed that fighters who act individually aren't ready for missions. Arya stood up and asked Ibuki to help him train for coordination. Ibuki agreed immediately. They geared up, put on simulation lenses, and chose a mid-sized D-rank monster scenario. The training began, and when the monster appeared, Arya stepped forward to draw its attention while Ibuki attacked from behind with blue tongues of flame. But mid-battle, Ibuki began to weaken and sweat heavily. Arya noticed and thought to himself, Ibuki is B rank, yet he's already exhausted from fighting a D rank monster. Arya suspected the cause was Ibuki's special ability, passive mana absorption. When he's near, he drains Ibuki's strength. Arya felt frustrated. He couldn't control the absorption. He wondered if it was due to lack of training. He needed to master it. In the end, they defeated the monster. The system confirmed mission completion. Ibuki collapsed to the ground, sighing that his stamina had clearly deteriorated. He didn't know why he got tired so easily, but Arya knew it wasn't Ibuki's fault. It was because of his special ability. He remembered what Hiroto once said, talent users work as a team, but in Arya's case, if he joins a team, it's like taking away one member. Everyone else's output drops because of him. He admitted to himself that, as things stood, teamwork would only hinder others. Meanwhile, nearby, Kurano was finishing her own simulation. She charged her sword with lightning, and in a flurry of strikes, tore a massive monster apart. She finished the scenario in seconds. Seeing Kurano's simulation left Ibuki stunned. He'd heard that the whole Arya family were talent users. Arya confirmed that, adding, "Seems like she has relatives in monster hunting specialization," but then wondered why someone like Kurano was in the same lower-level class. The answer was cooperation. Ibuki approached her and asked if she wanted to train with him, but Kurano waved him off. She said she didn't have time, and there was nothing to learn from lower-class people, so he should not get in her way. Arya intervened, pointing out that cooperation was a major section of the exam. Since they were in the lower class, didn't that mean they needed to work together? Kurano smiled and said that might be true for ordinary people, but the promotion exam uses a cumulative scoring system. As long as she got full marks on ability, cooperation didn't matter. She turned, confident she would prove her worth without teamwork, even if the examiners were blind. Arya didn't speak after that. That night, at Arya's home, he lay on his bed, thinking about Kurano's words. The cumulative scoring system meant individual performance might be enough. However, he knew relying on short bursts of power wouldn't be enough to reach the top. He needed another plan. After an unknown amount of time, Arya suddenly woke up. There was a loud system announcement. All units to their positions. Transport preparations complete. The exam had officially started. Arya checked his phone. It was already morning. He looked out the window and went out. The school grounds had been transformed into a desert, the perfect battlefield. The instructors had reshaped everything for the test. The announcer continued. Students must wear their uniforms, deploy immediately, rescue designated targets, and reach the rendezvous points before the deadline. Arya put on his gear and checked his phone again. A map showed the rescue targets. He let out a dry laugh. So now they're turning classrooms into battlefields. He understood that dimensional rifts could appear anytime, anywhere. The school wanted them ready for the unexpected. Arya headed to the training area fully equipped, thinking the mission was simple: rescue targets and reach the meeting point. But at this academy, nothing was simple at all. Suddenly, he heard a loud scream behind him. He rushed over and was shocked at what he saw. Kurano was sitting on the ground, terrified and surrounded by insect monsters. She screamed that she wasn't okay. They were about to attack her. Arya assessed the situation. The monsters ran on mana. That meant he could handle them. He reached out and used his absorption skill. The monsters collapsed one by one after their mana was drained. He made sure the area was clear and told Kurano she was safe now. But instead of thanking him, she stood, dusted herself off, and acted like nothing had happened. Arya asked if she was scared of insects. She shouted that she just wasn't feeling well today. Arya let it go but reminded her more monsters might appear, and they had to keep moving. They resumed walking across the desert terrain with Arya leading and Kurano following. After a while, Arya turned and told her she was straying too far. He asked her to stay closer. Kurano told him not to worry. He said he wasn't worried, but their actions were being watched. If they couldn't show teamwork, their scores would drop. She reminded him she didn't care about coordination. He replied he understood, but asked her at least to keep communicating for appearances. Then Arya checked his phone. The next rescue target was on the 3rd floor of a nearby building. He suspected monsters might be stationed there. Arya finally reached the target site and began thinking of a strategy to defeat the monster. But before he could act, a massive snake attacked, smashing nearby rocks. Arya used his skill to absorb the monster's mana, but it was ineffective. He realized the magical difference between this monster and the smaller ones was too great. He couldn't stop its moves. At that moment, Kurano shouted for him to move. She leapt forward, lightning running through her sword, and struck the monster. Her first hit using a blade that purified the monster's magic severely restricted its movements. But it wasn't enough. The monster started spitting acid. Arya yelled to warn her, but Kurano turned her sword into an axe and prepared to finish it. Using a magic purifying hammer, she struck it hard and split it in two. She gave a sardonic smile as the system confirmed the kill. They did it. The monster was dead, but the floor beneath them began to shake violently. Before they could react, the floor collapsed under them and they fell several stories. They crashed down, surrounded by scattered debris. Arya stood in pain and quickly asked Kurano if she was hurt. She said she was fine but noticed a wound on his chest. Arya said it was nothing. Kurano began to apologize. If she had been more careful, the collapse wouldn't have happened. But Arya asked why she pushed herself so hard. This wasn't her only chance to get promoted. She didn't need to overdo it. Tears welled in her eyes as she explained. Her parents and all her siblings had higher-level talent. She had always been different. Her father constantly scolded her, saying she couldn't even train properly. At 5 years old, he locked her out for failing. She remembered begging, promising she would work harder. Since then, she devoted everything to training. She had no memories of friends or play, only effort. Arya reached out. He said he wanted to succeed to prove himself, and she wanted that too, so they should do it together. She looked surprised, tears in her eyes. She shook his hand, but he looked up and said they'd fallen into the depths of the rubble. They needed to get out quickly. Suddenly Kurano shuddered. A new monster appeared, an ugly, enormous millipede-like worm. He told Kurano to stay calm. This monster was smaller than the last. With her strength, they could handle it. Arya stepped forward to draw its attention and told Kurano to concentrate her mana and finish it with a clean strike. But Kurano realized her mana was depleted. She wondered if she'd used too much on the previous monster. Arya, who was still running, understood the truth. It was his fault. His presence near her drained her mana again. He cursed himself inwardly. All he did was take, and now she was left defenseless. Then he remembered something that character had told her. He'd absorbed massive amounts of mana, enough to be a mobile mana reservoir. If he focused, he might be able to use it not for himself, but for others. So he tried. He reached out to Kurano and used a skill, the reflection system. Mana flowed from him, transformed mid-air into Kurano's trait, and entered her body. They synchronized instantly. She gasped. Mana flowed back into her. She didn't understand how this happened. This wasn't something ordinary talent users could do, but Arya told her he could. She only needed to believe in herself. They could kill the monster together. Kurano focused, telling herself the monster was nothing, and she had to overcome it. She summoned one of her strongest skills, the magic purification staff, and struck the monster directly in the belly. It died instantly. She exhaled in relief. Arya approached and said they finally did it. Then he suggested they go back to finish the rescue. Arya asked if they could climb out by stacking rubble, but Kurano said there was no need. She formed a stairway-shaped structure with mana. Her trait was mana transformation. She explained that mana types differ. Some excel at raw release, some at shaping and control, and some, like hers, at transformation. She could freely create things using her mana. Later, they reached the target. Arya placed his hand on it to confirm the rescue, and Kurano followed. Then Arya said it was time to move to the next point. Before leaving, Kurano stopped him and thanked him for saving her earlier. Arya was confused. Kurano explained that transferring mana was extremely rare. It requires altering the mana to match another person's type. He admitted he hadn't been aware. He'd only focused on synchronizing with Kurano's circle and acted instinctively. Fortunately, it worked. Then Kurano apologized for how she'd treated him before. She said he probably had to work harder than her because of his background. She asked if he'd like to cooperate with her from now on. Arya agreed. They'd do their best to succeed. Kurano thanked him. From there, they went on to rescue more targets. Arya drew the monster's attention. Kurano took them down. Even when her mana dropped, Arya supplied it through the reflection system. Eventually, after multiple battles and rescues, they collapsed outside, drenched in sweat. Kurano asked Arya if he was okay. He nodded, but inwardly admitted that using the reflection system repeatedly was tiring him. Kurano was tired too. She analyzed the issue. Most talent teams have a frontline fighter and a backline fighter. While one fought, the other rested. They were supposed to take turns, but he and Kurano couldn't manage that at all. If a large class monster appeared now, they'd be in trouble. Both of them were drained. Then, it happened. A huge monster approached Arya from behind. Kurano screamed for him to move. He bent at just the right moment, barely avoiding the strike. Arya looked up. It was definitely a large class monster. Without stopping, the monster unleashed a dragon-like breath of fire. Kurano summoned a barrier and shielded them, but the continuous breath attack started to wear her down, and Arya noticed. The shield cracked. Before it could break completely, help arrived. A group of students led by a red-haired boy showed up. He ordered his team into a proper formation with a front and back line and coordinated attacks from all sides. Once the monster weakened, the red-haired boy stepped forward to finish it. He used a final skill, a massive strike that killed the monster. Then he turned to the group and celebrated the kill. Kanyama looked more pleased than his team, even though they did most of the work. He walked over to Arya and Kurano, reminding them they had been in serious danger earlier. Arya agreed and thanked him. Kanyama, the son of the founder of the startup Sentinel, said it was still surprising to see Arya and Kurano working together. His family's company had grown fast by making use of dispersion ability users. With huge financial backing, Kanyama had elite training. Though his magical ability was average, his knowledge was exceptional. Arya praised his team's coordination. It was top-notch. Kanyama downplayed it. Sentinel always equips teams to coordinate. Hearing that, Kurano thought their teamwork still needed work. If they couldn't coordinate, their exam scores would suffer. She wanted to ask Kanyama for advice on team coordination but hesitated, wondering if that would be too bold. Just as she was about to speak, Arya directly asked Kanyama if they could join his team for the next part of the exam. He admitted they wanted to learn coordination and that their mana was running low. Kanyama smiled and said he didn't mind. Then, one of his teammates, Inagi, collapsed behind him. Kanyama quickly asked if she was okay. The other said Inagi looked exhausted and asked what to do. After a brief pause, Kanyama said they should rest before moving to the next objective. Arya and Kurano helped Inagi to a rest platform. Kurano gave her some water and asked if she was alright. Inagi said she just needed a moment. Arya asked why Inagi had chosen to join Kanyama's team, even though they didn't seem close. Inagi said it was simple. Kanyama knew what he was doing. She thought she'd get better results, staying with him. But Arya noticed something. If someone like Inagi, a frontline fighter, was that exhausted, Kanyama must be intentionally avoiding switching roles. That seemed odd given his reputation. He suggested Inagi leave the team. Clearly, they were exploiting her. Suddenly, Inagi exploded in anger. She shouted that it wasn't his business, stood up, and left in a huff. Outside, she approached Kanyama and apologized for making him wait. He asked how she felt. She said she was fine. Kanyama smiled and said he expected that. He told her not to worry, even if she broke down during the exam. As long as she'd earned his trust, he'd write a recommendation to his father's company for her. Later, the group reached their next location. They stood on top of a cliff overlooking a building below. Kanyama mentioned the rescue target was inside, but the slope was too steep to go down directly. One teammate suggested building a mana foothold. Inagi nodded. They created a descending mana platform from the cliff to the building's base. Inagi, already exhausted, helped form the foothold while panting, and Arya noticed. Still, Kanyama ordered them to advance. The group went down and reached the building. Then swarms of giant bat monsters filled the sky. Arya and Kanyama were surprised. These were predatory bats targeting the weakest member of the group. At that moment, that member was Inagi. While Arya and Kurano battled the bats, Kanyama turned to Inagi and asked her to summon a shield for him. She answered that she could, but her vision was blurring. She lost strength and collapsed to the ground. Kanyama looked at her with disgust. He'd had enough. In a fit of anger, he kicked her down the stairs. Inagi fell, shocked, eyes wide in disbelief as tears streamed down. She hit the ground and fainted for a short while. A swarm of bats circled her, ready to attack. Kurano quickly threw a shield around her to protect her from the bats. Meanwhile, Arya blew up multiple enemies using his reflection system, clearing the area in an instant and surprising Kanyama. They rushed to Inagi's side and asked if she was okay. Kanyama coldly told the group they'd skip this objective and move to the next. He signaled his team to follow him. As he left, Arya shouted after him, "How could he abandon a teammate?" Kanyama sneered. Inagi was never a teammate, just a calculated step. That's strategy. Get rid of excess baggage. Arya was angry and demanded to know how Kanyama could say something so cruel. Kanyama answered calmly. This promotion test meant nothing to him. His future was already secured. What mattered was showing the qualities his father valued: decisiveness, psychological control, manipulation. He had to prove his competence, and that meant cutting off burdens. Then, without another word, word, Kanyama turned to leave. Suddenly, Inaji moved. She woke up in a daze. Kurano rushed to her. Arya helped her up and told her what had happened, how Kanyama had pushed her and used her as bait. She froze, then realized the truth. It had all been planned, but she forced herself to speak. She said she needed the recommendation. She had no other option. Her family needed help with medical bills, and to survive. Being from the lower class, this exam was her only hope. She begged Kanyama. She needed the recommendation to Sentinel. It was her only chance to survive. But Kanyama burst out laughing. He said she'd never understood anything. She was never meant to get a recommendation. Inaji froze. Kanyama explained further. Sentinel's clients were all wealthy. They couldn't risk trusting a poor girl who might sell their data or leak their secrets. That's why she'd been easy to use. He'd kept her around under the impression she'd be a decent shield, but now she was fired. Inaji stood motionless, unable to take it in. She shook her head in denial. She said it couldn't be true. He couldn't have been exploiting her all this time. Meanwhile, Arya's anger hit a peak. His body flared with an aura. He began absorbing mana from the stair Inaji had made, including the platform under Kanyama and his team. In seconds, the stairs vanished. Kanyama and his crew fell from the height and slammed into the ground. Kanyama dropped to his knees and screamed, "This must be Arya's doing." Arya told him he'd trampled Inaji's dignity and that he needed to apologize. Kanyama stood and sneered at him. He said Arya was acting like a paragon of justice just because he mastered some strange powers. Kanyama warned that if Arya crossed him again, he'd be destroyed. His team immediately prepared to attack, flames, blades, magic at the ready. Kanyama gave the signal. The girl on his team launched fire explosions. Arya dodged them in mid-air, but another member lunged with a sword. Arya twisted, barely avoiding the strike. Before he could catch his breath, Kanyama unleashed a barrage of attacks. Arya blocked and staggered, barely holding on. He noticed their coordination, the controlled movement via mana manipulation, followed by close-range pressure. It was tight and brutal. He wondered if he could break through. Kanyama mocked him. If he was already tired, why not move in before he collapsed? He might have a chance in close combat. Then Arya realized Kanyama knew his power. Kanyama confirmed it. As a businessman, he always gathered information. He knew Arya's strength relied on absorbing others' mana. Suddenly, one of Kanyama's crew rushed in for a finishing blow. But before the strike landed, something unexpected happened. The attacker was the one who fell. At that moment, Arya summoned a sword crafted by converting mana. Kanyama was stunned and demanded to know how Arya used mana conversion too. Arya focused inward. He used the same method he'd used to pass mana to Kurano. He gathered the right energy for conversion, pushed it through the reflection system, and it worked. He raised his hand again, now summoning a volley of converted mana behind him. He manipulated energy freely. Kanyama's eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. Arya was changing mana types mid-fight and manipulating them precisely. Wasting no time, Arya launched attacks at Kanyama, but a team member quickly shielded him. At this point, Kanyama knew Arya was already exhausted and had used up his mana completely. His body trembled, sweat beading on his face. He could barely stand. He whispered to himself that he'd overused the reflection system and was now in its cooldown. But something else felt strange. His body felt hot, endless, and empty at the same time. Kanyama laughed and taunted him. He ordered his team to finish it. One more attack and Arya would fall. Kurano tried to intervene, but she was drained too. She warned Arya not to push himself further. His mana was dangerously low, but Arya wouldn't listen. He was in a daze. He thought, so, this is mana exhaustion. Hot, endless, and empty. Then he told Kanyama to stop. Kanyama ignored him, said it was over, and ordered the end. But something changed. Dark mana began leaking from Arya's body. The ground cracked around him. The air distorted. The dark energy spread outward and reached Kanyama and his whole team. Suddenly they began sweating uncontrollably. Their limbs trembled. Mana leaked from their circles as if being forcibly drained. Kanyama panicked. He kept his distance from Arya. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Yet their strength was fading. Arya had inadvertently activated a deeper level skill. Mana Circle Reversal. He extended his hand and unleashed the ability at full power. All the mana around him, including Kanyama's team's mana, was drawn to him. Arya closed his eyes. He felt it, the synchronization of his circle completed, and it recharged. In seconds, Kanyama collapsed to one knee. His teammates fainted completely. Arya stood above him, exhausted but steady. He asked if Kanyama had changed his mind about apologizing. Kanyama shouted that he'd never apologize. Then he ran. As he fled, his father's words echoed in his head. Never lose. Always control others. Stay on top. He swore revenge. He would regroup and crush Arya next time. But at that moment, the bat monsters returned quickly and ravenous. Kanyama froze, Remembering their pattern, they always target the weakest. Right now, he was the weakest. He covered his head, helpless and frightened. Then a wave of dark mana swept the area and wiped out the bats instantly. Kanyama looked up. It was Arya. He asked why Arya had saved him. Arya didn't answer. He said just one thing: apologize to Anaji. That was all he wanted. Kaneyama, trapped and helpless, finally turned to Anaji and muttered an apology. The exam was over. Meanwhile, in the examination hall, the instructors watched the whole simulation. One of them commented that Arya had resolved the situation. Finally, they could relax. The school director gave a dry smile and glanced at the woman beside him. He teased her that despite being busy, she had come down to observe the lower class experiment. Was there someone she was watching? The woman replied calmly that it wasn't that just promising students were being kidnapped quickly. She added that the president had simply asked her to check on them while they were still in the nest. Back with Arya, Kurano Inaba said she'd call security. To her surprise, Inaba stood and walked over to Kaneyama. She told the pitiful-looking man, looking back, waving that job offer around just to trick people, that's fraud, right? But none of that matters anymore. I don't want to be part of a company with a despicable CEO like you. I'll prove myself without your help. After a while, support arrived by helicopter to treat the injured. Arya told Inaba that she was stronger than she'd thought. Inaba replied she decided to do whatever it took for her family. Depression won't fill her stomach. Then she thanked Arya for everything. Arya told her not to worry about it. Arya waved goodbye as Inaba headed toward the helicopter. With a jealous look, Kurano told Arya they had to head to their next point. Arya said, okay, then wondered if she was mad about something. She showed him the map. A large cluster of victims was straight ahead. Arya agreed but said there had to be a reason no one had been able to rescue them yet. Either way, they had to check it out. A few minutes later they arrived at the site. They could see the monsters had gathered in basin-like terrain, and the victims were trapped in the building in the center. Kurano said that even if they used shields and rushed inside, they'd face a severe problem once their mana ran out. But a few teams working together might pull it off. To his surprise, he saw Ibuki and his team fighting monsters in the center. The monsters kept attacking relentlessly. Ibuki told his teammates that if people were really trapped in that building, they had to help now. They just had to push forward, even if it exhausted them. A man disagreed and asked if he was serious. Ibuki answered, yes, this is our job, right? But the man said they also had to know the school's rules. If anything happened during a class exercise, no one would take responsibility. If they died here, it was over. Then a savage spider appeared behind him. Before he could react, it sprayed him with venom, leaving him unable to breathe. Ibuki immediately cast a spell on it and moved to check the man. Seeing this, the girl turned to leave. She told Ibuki the spider's venom was deadly. If the man wasn't treated within 10 minutes, he wouldn't survive. Ibuki said his life or death depended on them now. They could make it if they broke through the monsters and carried him to the med station. She refused. She told Ibuki he must be joking. She was withdrawing. She wouldn't risk her life worrying about others in such chaos, so she'd spend the rest of the time protecting herself. Then she ran off, waving goodbye. As she left, Ibuki looked at the weakened man and told himself he'd sworn to live with dignity as a power user and as a person. He remembered when he was young, a dimensional rift had been announced, and everyone was told to evacuate immediately. His father had said it was fine units of power users would be there soon. Ibuki hadn't been scared then. He'd seen it on the news a million times. His father smiled and told him he'd become one of them someday. But to everyone's shock, the monster tore through the shelter and people panicked. Even power users ran, which surprised him, and his father died protecting him. That day, many power users abandoned their posts, and the defensive line collapsed. 70% of the evacuees were slaughtered. Since then, Ibuki refused to run like a coward. Then the man was lifted to leave, but more spiders surrounded them and began spraying venom. He closed his nose, despite the pain. Above, Kurano asked Arya if he was really sure about the plan. Arya answered yes and asked her to do it. Then, from above, he descended into the center. Ibuki was surprised to see him. Kurano thought Arya reckless as always for flying through the catapult. Arya told Ibuki they would break the siege. Ibuki was amazed Arya had launched himself like that. The injured student? Ibuki said he needed immediate medical care and asked how they'd get him out of the encirclement. Then the earth sword cut through. Kurano had sent it, she'd used her last strength on it. Arya took the sword, ready to fight. He knew the reversal mechanism couldn't be used again, but with the power he'd built and the relationships he'd formed, he'd definitely break through the siege. Then, with a single strike, he wiped out several spiders. Ibuki was stunned by Arya's incredible strength. He thought to himself that most power users prioritize boosting magical power above all. Even if you train your body, your win rate only goes up by 1%. Not giving that up is what makes Arya who he is, something Ibuki didn't think he could do. A few minutes later, Arya told him they'd soon reach the med station. Then the man fell. Ibuki checked his body and saw he was starting to cool, and his pulse was barely perceptible. 2 spiders appeared behind him. He quickly activated his circle and fired at them, but his magical power was already depleted. Gritting his teeth with anxiety, he refused to risk the man further. Though it's natural to run if you have no choice, he refused to do it, knowing that if he'd intended to flee, he wouldn't have come in the first place. He shielded the man with his body as the spiders surrounded them. Seeing this, Arya immediately raised his sword to strike the monsters. We see our hero Arya transforming, thinking and saying, "The weapons made with magic are powerful, but they don't last long. I don't care, even if it's just with my hands. I'll carve my own path." He finishes off the monsters, then goes to Ibuki and wakes him up. When Ibuki wakes, he asks, "Arya, what about him?" Arya says, "Ah, amazing as always." Suddenly, Ibuki gets weak and says, "At that moment, our hero, Ibuki, most monster attacks rely on magical power, so the poison should also be made by converting that power if that's really the case." And Ibuki asks, "What are you doing?" Arya says, "I'll take that pain away from you." Ibuki improves, then says, "I feel my body getting lighter." Arya, drawing the power out of the man's body, says, "I've taken about half the poison. You should be able to hold on a bit longer. I'll explain later. First, we need to get to the medical station." Arya narrates, "From there, it was a desperate rush to the medical station, and the moment we arrived, I lost consciousness. When he wakes up, he's surprised to see Sensei and asks, 'The time limit passed. Did I fail?' Sensei says, 'You and Kurano succeeded before the time ended. Kurano saved a large number of targets.' Sensei remembers when Kurano said, 'That wasn't just my achievement. Look at the data. I was able to reach them because Arya opened the way for me. Even if it split evenly, it passed the crossing line easily.' Arya asks, 'And Ibuki?' Sensei says, 'The treatment finished a little while ago, and he left saying he had something to do. As your main teacher, I'm glad, and at the same time I feel lonely.' Arya says, 'Thanks for everything you've done for us so far.' I'll swear our hero stands in front of his class, thinking, remembering his sister, 'Even if my class changed, what I have to do stays the same. Reach the top and pass it too. Just wait a little longer. From today, I'm in the upper classroom and says, 'Are there people here? Welcome.' Kurano says, 'I'll be watching over you from today. I'm Kurano.' Our hero says, 'Good morning, Kurano. Did you practice that greeting?' Kurano gets annoyed, she didn't practice anything, and asks, 'By the way, is this really the upper tier?' A girl with purple hair says, 'That's right. You are the students who passed the promotion exam, right? Come in. I'm Takahata. I'm the first class teacher. Alright, let's start class right away.' Kurano asks about the other students. Takahata says they're registered, but as trainees and teams contracted with the academy, Kurano asks, 'Do they participate in missions?' Takahata says, 'There are some restrictions, but they do fight monsters. Honestly, at your levels, it's impossible.' Arya asks, 'What do we need to do to become trainees?' Takahata says, 'I understand your enthusiasm, but first we need to verify your abilities. The escape test from the lower tier and the trial to prove your strength in the upper tier can't be at the same level, right? I need to see with my own eyes to believe it.' She goes and wakes a sleeping boy, saying, 'Wake up, Nakata. It's time to work.' He wakes and asks, 'What's this surprise attack about?' This boy is Nakata Toji. Takahata tells him, 'Give these newcomers a bit of a rough welcome.' Training ground, Takahata says, 'You two will have a match against this man.' Kurano is shocked and Nakata says, 'Him too. Do we really have to do this?' Takahata says, 'If you do well, I'll add some points to your terrible scores.' Nakata replies, 'Alright, I'll go in at about 30%. He starts releasing his power. Kurano is stunned at the power. She and our hero keep blocking it. Our hero thinks, releasing mana shouldn't allow precise control, which means he can control mana energy with the same power as his mana release. I couldn't absorb it all with a reverse magic circle, so this is upper tier level. Kurano can't believe such a gap in power and that they still need more training. Our hero says to her, 'Kurano, can you give me a little time?' Very happy, saying, 'What a surprise. I never imagined Arya would come to a place like this.' Our hero says, 'If I don't eat sweets, my muscle mass decreases, and then I won't hold up if I stay tense all the time.' Kurano thinks to herself, maybe Arya is trying to cheer me up in his own way. Later Arya says, 'Kurano, there's something I want you to know.' Kurano replies, 'Reverse magic circle and redirecting the mana flow.' So that's Arya's power. Honestly, the idea of dealing with monsters confuses me, but I'm confident in you, Arya. I see that what matters is how you use your power." On the bus, a voice says how careless he is, that he doesn't even know death is approaching. Suddenly, a huge light appears and the bus enters it. Where they are, they've been transported to a distant, very strange place. Kurano speaks to calm them. "Everyone, please stay calm. We are a chosen people. Reckless exiting is dangerous. We'll explore the area, so don't stray from it. This place is really…" Our hero Arya says, "Yes, we're inside a void pit. If my memory serves me correctly, the pit we passed through didn't hit us directly." Kurano says, "Impossible. Then how do we get out of here?" They are shocked when a voice says evilly, "It's been a long time, humans." Suddenly, a huge army appears with their leader. Kurano doesn't understand who they are. Our hero says, "He planted the reflection device in my body. Are you behind all this? What's your goal?" The monster says, "If you want to know, come to me yourself. Follow me." Kurano asks Arya, "What does this mean? Wasn't he supposed to be an ally?" Our hero says, "I don't understand his true intentions either." Kurano, protect the bus. A huge battle breaks out between our hero and those soldiers. He finishes them off, and the monster laughs and says, "It seems you're starting to understand your trait a little, but you still have a long way to go." A huge monster appears with 2 swords and wants to finish our hero, but his ability protects him and he can't endure the 2 swords any longer. He tells himself, he's on a completely different level from the others. I can't hold out like this. Suddenly, Kurano helps our hero, but shockingly, the monster stabs her with his sword. Our hero gets extremely mad and unleashes all his power at him, but surprisingly, the monster manages to cut off both of our hero's hands. Our hero is stunned and doesn't know what to do and says to himself, "My hands, what do I do now?" With this look, "Is this my end?" The monster speaks then and says, "What's wrong with you, human? Are you one of those who refuse to submit? Weren't you supposed to be strong and not bow to anyone?" Our hero can't do anything, falls to the ground and thinks, "I'm still breathing. I won't give up. I won't let myself feel this helplessness again." He activates his ability, reflecting the flow of magic at full force. The monster, shocked, says, "Even after all this, you're still holding out at full strength. The amount of magic I can absorb is nearing its limit." Our hero manages to stand up to a great degree. Something forms intensely, and he gathers an enormous power. When the monster sees that, he says, "That's good now, and that's more like it." Our hero is stunned by his own strength and thinks, "What's with this hand? The feeling isn't different from my original hand. It even feels lighter." He lunges at the soldier and manages to hit him, then says to himself, "I don't care what it is. I'll use everything I can." Suddenly, the monster soldier transforms into a very terrifying form. Our hero is extremely surprised and thinks, "This toughness and muscle power aren't at human level. This is," but abruptly the monster shoots something out of its mouth and hits him. Our hero puts his hand on the wound and says, a fierce fight ensues between him and that monster again, but the battle stops and the monster commander appears and says, "Excellent." Our hero asks him, "What are you planning?" The monster commander says, "That's enough. Don't look at it like that." The commander pulls Kurano and says, "I created body tissue through mana transformation. My mana transformation isn't comparable to human transformation. That girl's body should have become more flexible than before." Our hero asks, "You attack us, then help us?" The commander says, "You've gained a new power too, right? This power is magical absorption. It's the ability to develop your absorption trait and integrate magical power into your body. Its form changes according to your will. It can even mimic human shapes." Our hero says, "Don't tell me you did all this to awaken that power?" The commander replies, "Don't misunderstand. You could have died here too. You resisted and survived, that's all. Sorry, but I can't stay in one place for long. Aim for higher heights. For my sake too." Our hero later narrates that he and the bus returned to the original city, and Kurano, who was injured, was also taken to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor tells our hero, "The tests showed she's healthier than healthy, you know? It's probably just extreme fatigue. She should wake up after she rests a bit." The next morning at school, there's a note that reads, "The following student is required to see the principal immediately. Arya Sumeragi." In the principal's office, our hero enters and finds the principal sitting with Takahata, and next to her a green-haired person who says, "This person is the commander of the Special Operations Unit of the National Demon Countermeasure Corps." Our hero doesn't understand anything. Takahata explains that monster fighting agencies have several systems, governmental, big corporations, and so on. But the National Demon Countermeasure Corps is the most prominent government system. It's an elite group with high-level skills nationwide. The green-haired person says, "Nice to meet you. I'm Kurano Subaru. I'm here today to get to know you and evaluate you. I've heard that my ditzy sister is always under your care." Our hero realizes this person is Kurano's older brother and greets him. Subaru approaches and says, "I've heard a lot about you from my sister, that you're very special, and that really caught my attention." Our hero thinks to himself, "When I think about it, Kurano doesn't have a great relationship with her family. Would she actually tell them about things like that? Hard to imagine. Takahata says, the decision is yours, but this opportunity shouldn't be missed. Even at this school, they call one person every few years only. Our hero asks to join as a trainee. He thinks, first I'll enter their circle. I can deal with the reasons later. But if there's a chance to get close to people at the national level, I'll never let it slip. At the National Demon Countermeasure Corps headquarters, our hero stands and thinks, I've seen this place a million times in the news and online. I never imagined a day would come when I'd enter the main building myself. Subaru asks, should we go in? Arya says, yes. But our hero is going to walk another way. Subaru stops him and leads him another route, saying, that above-ground building is just a symbolic media facade. Any tall building, if attacked, becomes an easy target, right? Our real headquarters is. They enter and our hero sees huge things in electronics and technology he's never seen before. Subaru says, surprised? This place also functions like a construction site for evacuation shelters, though it can hold less than 1% of the population. A very advanced train arrives and Subaru says to Arya, get on, I'll explain while we go. Even inside the train there's a monitoring room. Time is precious, so let's start your introduction right away. The main job of the National Demon Countermeasure Corps is hunting demons and sealing dimensional rifts, but our Special Operations Unit has another main mission. We uncover the secrets behind these phenomena. What's the demon's goal? What happens to the people the dimensional rifts swallow? We investigate these questions. Our hero doesn't understand anything, so Subaru begins explaining. The demons that come from dimensional rifts don't think and don't have digestive systems. In other words, they don't attack humans intentionally, nor do they want to eat them. We see them more like guardians protecting the dimensional rifts. When our hero sees a certain location on the screen, he remembers his sister, and Subaru continues. The dimensional rifts keep expanding until the deepest demon in them is overcome, and the moment they stop expanding, they swallow everyone in the area and vanish. What's the true purpose of these rifts? Our hero says, there are many theories, but I think they could be tools for abducting large numbers of people. Subaru laughs mockingly and says while explaining what's on the screen, that actually matches our assessment. Now, this next part is secret. This man was swallowed into a dimensional rift 5 years ago during an operation and was qualified, and he was recently seen and captured. He's now detained under our supervision. We see a person sitting restrained and our hero can't believe what he sees and says, he's detained? You mean? Subaru continues. Exactly. He probably came back from another dimension, and that's important evidence for solving mysteries of the other world. But unfortunately, he lost his ability to speak. Well, linguistics, information engineering, magical powers. We gathered experts from all fields and tried everything. The man then looks toward the screen. Our hero is shocked and thinks, he's looking at us? Subaru says, strange. He never responded to the cameras before. I wonder if he feels something. After analyzing his brain, the memory fragments we managed to extract in the end were this. We see that the man turned into a very terrifying monster and was searching for something called the strong vessel. Our hero is very surprised because this isn't ordinary human talk. Subaru says, someone with intelligence unlike ordinary demons, what we call an upper-class demon. They seem to be looking for that strong vessel. Looks like we've reached them. When they enter the room, our hero is surrounded by men from every side and angrily says, what does all this mean? Subaru replies, members of the National Demon Countermeasure Corps are under constant surveillance to prevent any misconduct, and so are members' families. According to reports, my sister entered a dimensional rift with you recently and came out alive. It also appears you've acquired a strange power in a short time. Arya asks, what exactly do you mean? Subaru answers, the one who came back from the other dimension we showed you earlier was found attacking people indiscriminately. His power was much higher than what was recorded 5 years ago, and when we examined his body, we discovered parts had been replaced with non-human components. If the demon's goal is the strong vessel, meaning they find humans they can use as military power, then we must act immediately. I need you to answer my question. Who exactly are you? We see Arya ask Subaru whether this decision was his alone or not. Subaru says, we're part of an organization, so naturally the higher-ups approved it from the start. In the end, it's hard to touch those from outside. But even if there's only a 1% chance, we must move if there's any suspicion. Arya says to himself, basically, even if I run away from here, they'll still be watching me with their eyes. Then Arya says to him, let me make one thing clear. I'm on the side of humans. Subaru is shocked at that moment. We see Kurano nervously saying to Takahata, this doesn't make sense. Why is Arya the only one being summoned? I was in the same place. If there's a punishment, I should be punished too. Takahata tells her, you're misunderstanding, Kurano. Arya isn't being punished, on the contrary. This is something to celebrate. He's been offered to join the Special Operations Unit in the National Demon Control Corps. Wait, don't tell me your brother didn't tell you anything? Kurano is stunned by what she hears. Back with Arya and Subaru. Subaru asks, I'll ask you straight, do you intend to give up? Arya replies, if I do that, I'll be imprisoned like him for life, right? Then guards start to unleash power on our hero and try to restrain him, but they can't, and Subaru is very shocked by our hero's power. Then Subaru shouts loudly, all units, take combat formation. Move to restrain him. All the soldiers start advancing to capture and control our hero, but our hero surprises them. He draws a sword and starts fighting them all with skill. Subaru is stunned and thinking to himself, he has magical fusion and also magic control. His adaptability in combat. This isn't normal. Then he shouts to his men, everyone, switch to support formation. I'll release the magic restraints. At that moment our hero thinks, the whole place is shaking? Subaru, a huge monster, says, I'll show you something special. The power of the Special Operations Commander. Our hero is shocked and thinks, this is the ultimate form of magic control, Aramitama. But the monster moves closer and says, if you want to live, bow before me. Suddenly the monster strikes our hero and sends him flying. He's shocked and thinks his attacks are heavy too, so this is the Special Operations Commander's power, but if it's done through magic control. He then activates the circle reflection ability at full release, but with Subaru's help, the monster manages to counter our hero's ability. Our hero is stunned. Subaru says, supply unit, give me more mana, Aramitama. Twin Spirit, just surrender now. Our hero is shocked and doesn't know what to do. Then he begins to release his power, saying, I still don't understand exactly what this power is, or even who I really am, but I'm on the side of humans. His arm begins to regenerate, and everyone is shocked, saying, he's not human. Subaru says then, to protect this country, we must eliminate any possible danger. It's our duty. A soldier speaks up. Captain, we've received an emergency signal. Miley won a tag. At Takahata and Kurano's spot, Kurano has her sword raised at Takahata and asks, Mitsuki is coming here. Let me see my brother. Takahata, scared, says, sorry, even if you're family. Kurano replies, if the captain's own sister gets arrested, his reputation will be ruined, right? Tell my brother this if he doesn't want to lose his position. At the construction site planned as an evacuation the Times shelter, the workers are standing around when a monster suddenly attacks and kills one of the workers. Back to Kurano, standing before our shocked hero. Her brother says, causing a disturbance in the base, you're a disgrace to the Kurano family name. Kurano tells him she felt something strange. How was I suddenly chosen by the National Demon Control Corps? Subaru says, clearly my intuition was right. There's something behind this. Kurano asks, do you suspect he's working with demons? Something like that? Do you have any proof he's just a puppet of a demon? Subaru says, I still see this man showing a non-human power with my own eyes. Kurano replies, Arya might have a terrifying power, but did he use that power to attack you on his own? Didn't he use his power because circumstances forced him? I understand the fear of demon power, but if he didn't hurt anyone, then Arya is innocent. You can't harm an innocent person without any proof, and I won't allow that. Subaru asks, what do you know? They hear a voice. Attention all units. A strange spatial rift has been confirmed in Sector 23. Soldiers nearby must guide civilians to safety and deal with the spatial rift. Subaru says, at a time like this, it's close by. Everyone to combat stations. Lock the doors and seal the sector. Any demon that gets through must be crushed completely. I'll go to the spatial rift alone. Kurano says, you're going alone, brother. Subaru says, the team will handle securing the sector and evacuation. I'll deal with the spatial rift using Aramitama in this situation. It's our best option. But our hero speaks up. Subaru, no, Captain. Please let me accompany you as a member of the Special Operations Unit. See with your own eyes what I really am. Subaru replies, understood. Come with us. Kurano wants to go, but Subaru says to her, who are you exactly? Enough. A worthless person like you coming with me won't make any difference. Kurano gets furious and a strange power shows from her. Then, calming down, she says, ever since I woke up, I've felt this weird feeling. I feel unnaturally good. Evacuation shelter where monsters are attacking all the workers. Our hero and his team arrive and start fighting all the monsters. Subaru stands thinking and says to himself, there are a lot of demons. I need to conserve my mana and wipe them all out with a single Aramitama. Kurano says, brother, You take charge of guiding people to evacuate and protecting the workers. Arya and I will crush the demons. We move faster than you, brother. Subaru says, clearly you see Arya as something big. Kurano replies, you have doubts about him, but Arya is someone who can fight for others. I was able to improve because of him, and I won't stay worthless forever. She rushes to help the workers and kills a monster, then checks on a worker. Another monster attacks her, but our hero manages to kill that monster and save her. Subaru stands, thinking sadly and remembering the past, saying to himself, Mitsuki believed Arya would definitely protect her. Mitsuki, who was always alone and crying, who started working with people. I thought it would be better for Mitsuki to give up and not try to become a candidate. That was my thinking. To create a world where people like Mitsuki wouldn't need to fight. That was my dream.